us on the news are Public Affairs Analyst Mayokun Ilo to discuss this development at the Senate. Thank you very much for finding time to join us.
Thank you.
Sometimes in May 2016, it was on the news that Nigerians would have to pay more for the petroleum product because subsidy has been removed. Are you amazed that 2 years after, we're talking about $3.something billion being paid as subsidy fee?
Just for the records, I think NNPC has come out to debunk the allegation as so far as the amount is concerned. It's actually $1 billion. It's a revolving loan, as the NNPC called it, when they were reacting to the issues in the Senate. What I see is more of theatrics. We have a bigger issue of subsidy, how much we are paying for fuel in this country. But if we are going to address that, it has to be holistic. From what I see with the plenary on Tuesday, there are 1 or 2 issues that stand out. One, Senator Marafa talked about some people maybe looking for money that they will use for campaign. That's where blackmail and trying to extort money from NNPC comes in. Then the president of the Senate talked about maybe setting up another committee. It's their right. It's within their jurisdiction to do. All these things have to be looked at in the context of maybe pricing of petroleum products. Are we paying the right price? Are we supposed to deregulate even at this stage? I don't like the idea of subsidy. Even the president himself doesn't like it. But somehow somebody has to pay the bills. I think that's where NNPC is looking for ways and means of recovering the cost that it incurs in the cost of maybe providing it at 145 naira per litre.
So you say theatrics, you're talking about the duty of the state of that NNPC now, or are you also looking at perhaps the duty of the Senate now? In this case now, we're talking about an alleged illegal subsidy management now at the quarters of the NNPC. How do you weigh the Senate's intervention now?
Okay, I use the word theatrics intentionally because there are at least 2 or 3 Senate committees that are in charge of those. Before you come to the floor of the National Assembly to make allegations, have you actually cross-checked with your own standing committees? There's a committee on public finance, there's a committee on downstream sector of the oil industry. Have you cross-checked with them? Senator Marafa is the chairman of one of those committees. He took exception to the comments being made by one of his colleagues, his own in the House. So they should look at those ones first. Those are, I believe they understand what is actually happening. When somebody said 2 people in NNPC, to my knowledge, is a big organization. It's a bureaucracy on its own. So you can't say 1 or 2 persons is in charge of monitoring anything. NNPC is big. Most of us in the country don't know how big NNPC is in terms of the kind of things that are under their purview. But we think everything about NNPC is downstream. Fine. Even the downstream sector, there's PEF, that's Petroleum Equalization Fund. There is the PPRA. There are some other bodies, Office of Accountant General of the Federation, that are involved in whatever NNPC does with public funds. Those people should be called instead of maybe just coming to the plenary and making allegations. That's the side I don't really agree with.
Prior to the cancellation of subsidy 2 years ago, this amount of money used to be, provided for by the nation's national budget, annual budget, since 1999. The challenge now, what Senator Biodun Olujimi is pointing out, is the fact that this money is not appropriated for by the National Assembly. Shouldn't we be asking questions here?
Some money are actually appropriated for in the budget, but things as they stand, I think if I were in the NNPC shoes, I would probably do the same thing. Because what we need to fashion out is how do we make sure that there is no scarcity in the country. It's a first line charge. If you are driving a bus and you are the driver and the mandate is don't make sure that this bus doesn't stop, is not grounded. What are the things that you're supposed to do? You look for ways to look for maybe funds to keep it running. Most of the things being put as subsidy now are actually joint venture cash calls maintenance of pipelines, and the rest of them. So they lump everything together and call it subsidy. It's not really subsidy. They are the things that NNPC uses to maintain the resources that is given to the country. So that's my understanding of it.
But let's look at how all this trickles down to the end users. It still falls on us as the regular people now who all over the country. How should one take this bit of news now, seeing all the many allegations that have been leveled at the quarters of the NNPC? I mean, they, just like Ugamadu, the NNPC spokesman, said yesterday, now NNPC remains the sole importer, so to speak, now of petroleum, so to speak. So how does this matter to us as a people now, with all the allegations against NNPC and the issue on how relevant subsidy still remains? Where does that leave us?
NNPC is the sole importer, but it's not by choice. We are all parties to it when licenses were given to private sector operators to import. But the cost of funds from the banks, amongst other things, made them to remove their hands from that regime. We had scarcity totaling about 4 months in this country because of that. NNPC stepped in as an intervention. Now, as long as we are having this international price of crude going up, in a sense, it benefits Nigeria because we get more for the crude oil that we sell. But in the other end, because we are also importing, we are looking at it from the other side now. We also have to be paying more, and we don't want to pay more. So how do we strike a balance between higher crude oil prices and higher products prices in the country? So it's a political decision. I'm sure the president, maybe it's not between now and May 2019, but after then, whoever is the president, will have to look at it holistically again. Once in a while, what do we do? Call the Senate. It's not about talking about it. We have to make the hard decisions. Even the governors, to my knowledge now, because the money is the first line charge, it's affecting them. So if the decision has to be taken whether to remove subsidy, whenever the price of crude oil goes up in the international market, let it reflect in our pump prices. Let everybody come to that decision, because as a Nigerian, I would say if it has to come to that, then we have to know whatever we are using money for. There has to be palliatives for the common masses.
All right, Mayokun Ilo, thank you very much for speaking with us, Public Affairs Analyst, on this crucial issue. We'll see how it all plays out in the coming days. Thanks again.